So one of the most anticipated new series from Shonen Jump to finally get an anime. One of the series that people are calling out and damn near damning it to hell, saying, yo dog, it kind of feels like a Black Clover ripoff mixed with a couple of other ingredients. Mashle, Magic, and Muscles. A new series by author Hajime Komodo. It's finally here, and a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people have different opinions on it, and one of the big things that I've been seeing going around the community, at the very least here on YouTube and even on other platforms such as the dreaded Twitter, is people calling Mashle, Magic, and Muscles somewhat of a Black Clover ripoff mixed with a few different elements such as One Punch Man, Harry Potter. There's even been a few people accusing it of being straight up Rock Lee in another dimension, almost a Rock Lee isekai anime. And before we continue with this one, if you would hit that subscribe button and that bell, I'd greatly appreciate it. You'd get my videos and I'd get you to watch. Hit them buttons. Thank you so much. In case you haven't watched the first episodes, basically the main character, Mosh Burndead, is a character that is born in a magic-filled world, however, lacks magic. Everyone in this world has these lines on their face, essentially scars, to showcase that they are wielders of magic. However, Mosh Burndead, an orphaned child at that, was born magicless and ultimately found by this guy named Regro Burndead that decided to adopt him because he was down on his luck as well and felt like this child was his calling to raise, and decided to raise him up because in this magic-filled world, ultimately, if you're born without magic, they tend to take you out of the equation, so to speak. They unalive children that are born without magic so that they could keep this whole bloodline of magic continuing and everlasting. However, because Regro knew that this would not be accepted, this child wouldn't be allowed to exist in this world, ultimately he had to raise Mosh in the woods in solitude and always warned him and told him as he grew up, hey, you can never go to town without me because if anybody ever finds out that you don't have magic, it'll be major trouble. So essentially Mosh is very sheltered and also comes across as a bit dim-witted because there's a lot of gags in the series of like he can't even open the front door without making a mistake. But therein also lies one of the pluses about Mosh. Despite the fact that he lacks magic, he is physically extremely strong. So much so that, again, when he opens the front door, he takes the door off the freaking hinges. However, one day Mosh is ultimately left alone and decides that he wants to go to town because he has an addiction to cream puffs and he wants to get a little bit of a bite. And it's kind of that whole thing of, you know, temptation, so to speak. So he ultimately leaves to town and is eventually discovered that he does not have a scar on his face, therefore he is magicless, and that creates a whole plethora of issues for Mosh and Regro. Because eventually officers arrive at their home and they are demanding that Mosh go with them because, yeah, he's not allowed to exist in this world. But of course his surrogate father, Regro, tries his best to basically say, hey, leave my son alone, run, Mosh, which leads to Mosh kicking major tail, ultimately leading into these officers making a deal. Because in this magic-filled world, there are schools similar to, think, Harry Potter, where you can attend these magic-filled schools, and this officer decides, you know what, he's strong enough that, hey, how about if you achieve this goal of becoming a divine visionary, we will allow you to live. But the catch, of course, is that he's going to be competing against a bunch of people that wield magic, and Mosh doesn't have magic. All he has are his muscles. And as far as the extent of Mosh's powers, so far, based off the first episode, we could gather that he has kind of superhuman-esque strength. Because again, he doesn't utilize magic in any of his attacks. However, when he's fighting some of the officers that have come to arrest him and Regro, he's ultimately knocking them out and taking them down with just using his hands. We've seen him in the woods lifting weights and, you know, ultimately gaining some gains. Mosh is definitely a lot stronger than the average human would be, which kind of begs the question, wait a minute, so why is he that strong? Is it just simply from training? Are they going to pull a Saitama gag that he did 100 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, ran 100 miles every single day? Or are they going to introduce something else, maybe a different element? Maybe it's just that Mosh is special because he was born. Also, not to mention the fact that, again, he's an orphan, which begs the question, well, who was his parents? So definitely a lot of mystery and setup for the future of the story in terms of, well, how the heck is he this strong enough to pretty much go up against magicians when he has no magic? Now, with that synopsis, you're probably like, it definitely does remind me of Black Clover in terms of, yeah, Asta was a magicless person in a magic-filled world and only also had his muscles. But I'll be honest with you, while it definitely borrows that idea and that concept, using it as essentially a template, Mashle, Magic, and Muscles is definitely a blend of other things from literature as well, and not only Black Clover. Because yeah, it does remind me of Black Clover in a certain regard, like I said, the whole Asta situation, but there's also a lot of comedy in there that reminds me similar to things like One Punch Man. The fact that Mosh is so freaking strong, it's kind of like Saitama, where it's like, it doesn't necessarily only take one punch punch from Mosh, but it's pretty damn close. Also, his obsession for cream puffs seemingly is just going to be an absolute riot. And then the whole Hogwarts-esque element of this magic school and him going to become a divine visionary, very similar to Harry Potter. So, I mean, that's 3 really epic blends to add into to create this recipe known as martial magic and muscles. And I mean, as far as the whole rip-off accusations go, then that would mean that we would have to call everything in Weekly Shonen Jump a rip-off because they're all inspired by each other. It's essentially a part of the Shonen Jump recipe where they create using certain elements and certain blueprints, but still go in their own direction. And as far as this first episode goes, they definitely handled a lot of different things very well. A1 Pictures, they made sure that the art looked decent, animation was good. I will say, in comparison to what I thought it would have been, I thought they would have put in a bit more of the works of some more Sakuga and things of that nature. So animation wasn't the most impressive in the world, and it seems like this isn't one of A1's, projects of passion per se, but it seems as though as far as what they were trying to accomplish, they did it pretty nicely. Also, the music was pretty interesting as well, and just in general, based off the first episode at the very least, it looks like you're in store for a pretty fun adventure. It doesn't seem like it's breaking the mold by any means, at the very least based off the beginning, but it seems as though Martial Magic and Muscles is about to be at the very least an interesting blend of some very awesome series. Again, having those comparisons isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Like Black Clover is a pretty awesome series, One Punch Man is massively hype, everybody loves Saitama, and I mean Harry Potter is one of the biggest and highest selling book series of all time. So it's a good and a bad. It's like, hey, the comparisons are great, but if it can meet expectations, it'll be a hit, dare I say it. And overall, based off this first episode, I would say if you're looking for something that breaks the mold of shonen, if you're like a shonen expert and you've watched and read a bunch of different shonen anime and manga, maybe you might not be the most impressed. However, if you're wanting something fun, you're wanting something that is a little bit of the shonen formula that you've seen, but at the same time still doing its own thing, then I definitely recommend checking out Martial Magic and Muscles. If you're a One Punch Man fan, you're gonna find the comedy, you're gonna find a lot of similarities between Saitama and Mosh, except I throw the argument that Mosh is a lot more dim-witted than anybody else because homie is just like, yeah, he's very dense. The Black Clover comparisons, again, also would lead to Rock Lee because Mosh's character design itself kind of looks like an older, more buff version of Rock Lee from Naruto. And I say that to say that, again, if you're gonna call it a Black Clover ripoff, then you gotta call it a Rock Lee ripoff because Black Clover got that concept, or at the very least was inspired of the concept of being in a world with power system that the main character doesn't have access to. And just in general, it seems like this is going to be a very fun and interesting, exciting series to go into. It's not going to be something that breaks the mold, but I think it'll do the job to quench your thirst. If you're looking for some epic shonen with some hilarious nature to it, Martial Magic and Muscles might be it. But if you've seen the first episode of Martial Magic and Muscles, let me know what you think. If you haven't, are you going to check it out? Again, it's by no means a ripoff of any of these series. It's a big inspiration, similar to several other series that have come before it, and it's pretty freaking hype. That's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and hit that bell to get more. Have an awesome day.
I have a dream, alone in my room as I sit with the tea. Couldn't possibly think what I often see, and you don't even know how I often blink. Lights be flashing and looking at me, such a odd, unique, yet I'm so unique, and you're looking at me. If the walls could talk, they would probably repeat, and I'd probably say, bitch, get the fuck off me.